is maybe not the largest group of people, but certainly one of the most continuous for going on for 2.5 years. And we thank our patrons for making that possible. And today we have David Silvera, who will be talking to us about a project that he is the driving force of, which was initiated by the Sephardic Genealogical Society. And David Silvera has been researching his Jamaican ancestors, including Moses Silvera Atias, who lived circa 1700. And he is an engineer. He has worked at NASA. As an engineer, he is a problem solver, and that's how he approached this project of transcribing the annual accounts of Bevis marks, one of the most important sources for Sephardic history and genealogy that there ever was. And I invite David to begin his talk now. David.
Good afternoon, Tom. Am I got a clear my front chart showing okay?
Yes.
It's okay. And you're not seeing any extraneous material around it?
No, and you're
okay.
perfectly audible.
Okay, so as long as I don't have a desktop or something untidy showing, it's good. Well, thank you, Tom and David Mendoza, as longtime engineering graduate of Edinburgh University. It's my privilege to present the results of more than 1,500 hours of collaborative work by myself and Ali, journalist, and Tan, archivist, and David, genealogist. Been primary investigators, myself and Ali have been the primary leads on this and working with the software that we're going to use. But we're honored to have had the tutelage of Tan Thielen, who's as our archivist and genealogist of renown, whose knowledge of Amsterdam community and the archives is invaluable in understanding what we are looking at as we go along, and the guidance, of course, of David Mendoza in London. We were recently joined by Bob Bazell, an archivist and antiquarian. Many of you know, and Tom just mentioned it, that I belong to a Jamaican family founded by the Portuguese Hebrew Nation. In the interest of full disclosure, my middle school Spanish and Latin gives me the capability to pronounce Portuguese words as if they were Spanish. And for this, I apologize in advance to the Portuguese speakers out there. This work is dedicated to my 6th great-grandfather, Moses Atias da Silvera, who successfully escaped the Inquisition and has not yet revealed his route to Jamaica in 1684. Moses one day will find you, and we just need to keep looking. This is part 1 of a presentation, is about the transcription and publication of the first book of Bevis Mark's accounts. Part 2 will come later, and it'll take a look at what the findings are within that book. Presentation topics. I'll start with a brief background of publications and archives, which will be known to most of the folks here who work in genealogy. We'll talk about why to transcribe source documents and why we selected the first account book. We'll also look at the Transkribus computer-aided workflow for doing transcriptions, and then demonstrate the look and feel of the published transcription. Finally, I'll close with a tease to bring you back for part 2 in a few weeks. As we look at these charts, it's interesting to reflect that the enabling technologies like Zoom and Transkribus made it possible for a team who have never met in person to collaborate on a complex project such as this one. So sit back and learn and listen and enjoy, hopefully enjoy. Looking at publications, there are really 2 groups here. The first done by historians, Barnett and Hyamson and Gasta, and then groups done by the congregation publications dealing primarily with the genealogy, life cycle events of the congregation. The publications that focused on history, laws, customs, and expenditures and are really no help from a genealogical perspective. They're vitally interesting. Of them, I strongly recommend the El Libro de los Acuerdos and Develasquez's book on the laws and charities of the Spanish and Portuguese Jews congregation. Recommend both of those for anyone who is involved with synagogue management and synagogue organization or has ever been involved in that. It's very interesting reading. It's absolutely staggering to believe the detail and attention that was given to everything concerning all aspects of the religious life and the community life. The Bevis Marks records, books 1 through 6, are the gold standard for genealogists at Bevis Marks in London. All of the publications mentioned were written many years before computers. And when I work with the computer on this archive, I marvel at the accomplishments of the authors who had to work with a human machine only. When we look at this chart, and if you analyze it, you'll very quickly see that there's very little genealogical information before 5439 or 1679. The Bevis Marks books with the supplement, Bevis Marks records 4 with supplement, went back to births from 1679, but didn't get before that. So consequently, there's limited life cycle coverage before 5439, and that's kind of what drove me anyway, to say, well, what is there before that we can find? And that led us to the Bevis Marks archives to look and see what was available. Well, Bevis Marks archival records are amazingly complete. The archivists over the centuries have collected some 1,800 items, and they have been deposited at the London Metropolitan Archives. Honorable Archivist Miriam Rodriguez Pereira was the last archivist responsible for transferring those. And with permission and travel, it has been, and it still is possible to see these original source documents at the London Metropolitan Archives. Happily, technology caught up, and some 200 scanned archival documents have been placed online by the National Library of Israel and can be reviewed and studied without leaving home. And that was what really got us started. It said, well, we've got some things we can look at, and where can we go before the 1679? And so this project was conceived because of the archives being available online. And for that, we're grateful for all the folks along the way who made that happen. So why transcribe 5436 to 38, which is 1676 to 78? Well, the good reason is that the original sources are unfiltered. That's always a good reason to go back to the source that hasn't been interpreted or transcribed by somebody else who highlighted their main interests. So second thing was that it's been largely overlooked by the researchers. It was recorded 2 years after the expansion of the original pre-church Lane synagogue, and the handwriting script is atrocious. That's the only way I can describe it. It starts out with some very neat pages, and then it gets worse. So there were different scribes, handwritten in Portuguese and Spanish, with some English and some Romanized Hebrew words. The accounts record the contributions at various religious, life cycle, and charitable events. So for each member or yehid, it's a list of what the contributions they made at different times during the year or the 3 years for, let's say, for festivals and life cycle events and so on. Also for Terra Santa and for redeeming captives. There's some records in here, but there's less information on those who were less fortunate, who happened not to be members, the forasteros, the pobres, and the tudescos. And forasteros being foreigners, pobres being, of course, those who are less fortunate, and tudescos being German Jews. So this was recorded 2 years after the expansion of the synagogue. It fills in some gaps, and it's a great opportunity for us to work with it, and that's how we got started. To set the context, this is the Pre-Church Lane Synagogue. It was opened in 1657 and finally given up in 1701, and Bevis was constructed. But it was a leased property, and it consisted mainly of one floor, and the expansion in 1676 was to add a floor and lower and upper floor. The lower floor had classrooms and administrative like rooms, and the upper floor had ladies' gallery, and they cut the center out of the floor so that ladies could look at the service down below through the traditional screen. So this was how it looked, and there's an amazing amount of information on this when I started to search the construction of it. The building itself was just demolished in the 1850s, but I understand that the floor plan or the basic plot is still utilized in a similar configuration with a different building totally. Well, time to look at the book. It's a leather-bound accounting book, 40 centimeters by 15 centimeters, a very tall book. It's the responsibility of the gabbai to keep the book, maintain the book, and to hand it off with due accounting diligence to his successor. In 1676, Solomon de Medina was the gabbai, and you can see his signature in the little box to the right. And in the following 2 years, 1677 and 1778, Jacob Jessiron Alvarez, whose signatures also there, was the gabbai. It's 180 pages, all scanned cover to cover from the material we had to work with. At the top of the page, you will see the title, in the inscription in the first page of the book. And it's Libro del Señor Gabbai Solomo de Medina, and the year. And you will start to see some of the peculiarities of Portuguese script. The Senor is abbreviated, the Livro is a V is a U, and we're just starting to see some of the things that happen when you get into working with paleography. So what's in the book? For a start, we're going to use the scan number, which is the absolute reference for pages in the book, because that way we can always backtrack to find things. Scans 9 through 17 are the Yehidim, the list of members listings. And they're listed by a given name, patronym if they have one, surname 1 and 2, and then the folio numbers, which is the accounting page number where you can find their contributions. Scans 20 through 81 are the actual accounts, and mostly members, a few forasteros. And as it was clear that they were short of paper because many of the pages had more than 1 year on them and more than one member on them. And as I indicated earlier, the script was really untidy and varied by the scribe or the gabbai, whoever was taking care of it. So let's look at the page. Look at the Yehidim, and this is listed by given name. So here are the Abrams and some of the Davids. You'll notice that the name Abram is abbreviated. There's a practice that anything that was long was automatically abbreviated. Isaac is also abbreviated similarly. And you'll see that the folio number appears after the name written in a different script. So, for example, Avram Alvarez Penso, he has a folio on page 11 and on page 93. Interesting analysis of the names. The listing is by given name, so this is quite easy to do. 75% of the given names are the patriarchs. 27 Abrams, 27 Isaacs and 24 Jacobs. Well, I guess we learned last week that Jews escaping Portugal did not bring any traditional music with them. Well, such music could not have been heard during 100 years of being worshipping as a converso. Excuse me one moment. Similarly, many arriving did not have Hebrew names and adopted biblical names on arrival, and most naturally the patriarchs would come to come up first as the first choices. Interesting custom in the Portuguese community, and this is not only here, but we found in Amsterdam as well, that the names are indexed by given name. I was thinking, why would they do this? Well, it could be that they were thinking it might confuse the Portuguese Inquisition. I don't know if that was the case, but it does make record keeping very difficult for genealogists working with life cycle events and trying to build family trees. If you have to sort your way through, dig in to find the surnames to work with. Another interesting thing that we'll see later on, you may not see here, but I observed was that in the accounts, most frequently, the given names are capitalized and the surnames are not. In this particular case, in the index, the scribe was very careful to capitalize the surnames, but it wasn't the case in many of the individual records. Taking a look at an example of the accounts page, there are two partial pages here. You'll see where the date is a date column on the left, the folio number is in the top right. On the left-hand side, at the top also is the Hebrew year. And the left-hand column has the date, and in the 1676, they use the Hebrew date. In the latter years, they use the Julian date, which is a little confusing. It's much easier when you're trying to examine, to understand the congregational, what's going on in the congregation and the festivals, if it's in the Hebrew date. So the later years, they went over to the Julian date. Looking at the record on the left-hand panel, on Nisan 10, Senor Abram Barakiel, he gave a promise of 1 shilling and 6pence on the second day of Pesach. The two panels are, the one on the left is reasonably clearly written, the one on the right is starting to deteriorate. They got a lot worse than that. And when you're trying to analyze accounts and they slope upwards on the right, there's no horizontal lines. It makes it rather interesting. We'll see why now, because in order to get the accounts in tabular form, we had to do layouts for the pages to guide the software. Excuse me. But before we get to the layouts, let's talk about the ground rules for transcription. In order to use a computer to transcribe text, you have to teach it. So it uses, the Transkribus platform uses machine learning text recognition to transcribe historical documents in any script or language. So you literally can take any script or language, show the computer this, show them what the transcription should be, and it will relate the two and learn it. So in the workflow, the human input for this must also be accurate and to train the computer accurately. So both manual and computer paleography depend on ground rules that you use consistently for the purpose of making the transcription. So the first thing is ground rules. The second thing is that we had to lay out the pages, and then this is a very neat page, nicely horizontally done,
But if the columns, if the rows sloped upwards, then we had to do a lot of drawing of lines. But what it does is that the computer looks inside the box that we've created and looks at it, finds the text and underlines it and said, this is what we're going to use. And then it generates the transcription. When you get the transcription back, you correct that transcription and you create a training session with the computer, and it learns the changes that you've made and it'll have an improved model. So we started with 8,300 words using an existing handwriting model, which was a French handwriting. I then corrected the pages transcribed by the software and retrained the computer and created a new model. We now have our 5th model, which has 62,700 words in it that we've trained. So when we get a new scribe, there's a pretty good chance we have to retrain for that scribe if it's significantly different from the prior scribe. Paleography ground rules are what guide the manual transcription and ultimately the machine learning. Standards have been established by Brigham Young University and Transkribus, I'm sure other places, but we use theirs. Key elements of this is to retain all abbreviations. Portuguese scribes use abbreviations everywhere, and we'll go into that when we do our part 2. We'll see some of those. Transcribe equivalents UV, well, because they're interchangeable, and INJ as written, and then use the best estimate of what the scribe intended character by character. And that really is probably where the most risky part is. We do literally have to make our best estimate. And you look at how they wrote other words with similar characters and what the spelling should be, and you compare the spelling. So our tailored approach, we did do some tailoring. We separated word contractions when we thought this might be helpful to understanding. This was another way that it conserves space, so they run words together. And we would separate them if we thought it would help. We didn't transcribe uppercase letters, characters, when they were used in the middle of a word. That often happened. Would have, for some reason, you'd have an uppercase C in the middle of a word, and why? It just described it that way. So we did not transcribe those. To help understand the way we understood it is that we've compiled a glossary of abbreviations and words and alternative spellings for the same words to try and help us understand what we're seeing. We did learn that Google does not translate 17th century Hebrew Nation Portuguese very well. It was no surprise, I guess. Our transcription is complete, and the first Bevis Marks account book is ready for publication. And it's 170 pages of accounting tables. And here's an example of what a table and page would look like. In this example, we're showing the source page on the left and the transcribed text page displayed on the right in adjacent panels. And the way this works is that a researcher would browse page by page or enter a search term and let the software find the pages where the search term appears. The software highlights the search result by selecting the text in both panels. So the person reviewing can see what they search for, and they can see what the source looked like compared to with the transcription that we've made. In this particular case, we've got an Elul 6, the happy arrival of Chavez and Villegas. You can see that more clearly on the transcription than on the other, but that's what it says. So the researchers, I hope, will try and feed back to us their corrections if they do find things that need to be fixed. But the good news is there's a lot of detail here that historians and genealogists can translate and publish themselves if they're interested in doing so. notably here, my blue dotted lines indicate, and it's not showing very well on the screen, but what it indicates that if you select the source line, and it'll highlight the transcription, or if you select the transcription line, it'll highlight the source, so you can compare the two continuously. Transkribus has a read and search publication facility, and this feeds electronically to that publication facility. And our plan would be to publish using the read and search facility that they have. So Bevis Mark's accounts would join the archives published online, including Amsterdam City Archives and the National Archives of Sweden and Finland. So that researchers will read and search directly online. And you'll see the early community life cycle events and travelers arriving and departing. And of course, the members, forasteros, pobres, tudescos, and despacheros. We took a look at publishing this in hard copy. Would be an immensely expensive job with 180 pages, tall pages of original source material, and then a similar number of pages corresponding text, because you'd really have to put the two together to be helpful to someone doing further research. So it's fortunate that Transkribus does have a facility for doing this, and we'll see at the end of this presentation how it's been done through with the example of the Amsterdam City Archives. The accounts publication would look a little more like this than the previous one, but the intent is the same. The table is on the right-hand side of the transcription, and on the left is the original source. And the original source side page, it allows you to scroll and pan and zoom so that you can look closely at it. And then it allows you, of course, to compare with the transcription, because the text are highlighted together when selected. So this is a publication, not with a hard copy book that you put on the bookshelf, but a place where you go on your computer and you'd be able to get this information. And then having selected a page, for example, you could then say, well, I really want to keep this page to work with. You could download it to your computer and work with it. I'm going to put a page up here with some useful links. Tom will put these in the chat, so you don't have to write this all down. The National Library of Israel, if you put I use the EN question sign afterwards because I want to see it in English, but you can choose your language of preference. Transkribus, which is at readcoop.eu, and Amsterdam City Archives, as published through Transkribus. I'll put that in the chat so that you can get the information. So looking at a summary of what we've done, we took a quick look at the publications and archives and the rationale for transcribing source documents and why they selected the first account books. We looked at the flow for computer-aided transcription and what the publication document would look like. I want to give you a preview of part 2, and then we'll visit the Amsterdam City Archives, so take a look at how the publication online works. In part 2, just so to know the names that we're going to find, the famous Yehidim, famous members, the Pardo, Makata, and De Sequeira, Carvajal, and so on. Names well known and influential names in London and some also in the Amsterdam community. We'll also meet and celebrate and commemorate with those not quite as fortunate as the others. We meet some of the poor in the Forasteros and Tudescos. We will meet Mayor Rofi, who we think is the first emissary to Terra Santa. And we meet some ladies called Esther and Sarah. We'll celebrate Brit, several Brits, and people traveling, arriving, and leaving. And we will also recognize prayers for those who are ill and for the deceased. My final thought about part 2, I'm going to leave you with the N.L. Berge conundrum. Among the records here, there are 4 contribution events with the words N.L. Berge. Well, we couldn't translate BRJ anyhow, any language. So when we analyzed it, turns out that there are only 2 real events. One is Hesvan 1 with Senor Henriquez in 5436, and one Kislev 5 with Senor Cohen also in 5436. And those repeat the following year, one for Senor Henriquez and one for Senor Cohen on the same days. Well, first thing we had to do is make sure that we had the right word. And in the example showing here, you will see that we've circled the word Berge and the word Hijo, so that you can compare the J's, so we know it ends in a J, because it's spelled it's from the way the letter is constructed. But that didn't help us with the meaning of the word Berge. So what's Berge all about? Well, we're going to ask you to join us next time to find out. And if you have an answer, please send it to Tom or David or myself, and we'd be delighted to hear from you, because it may be better than the one that we have. We're now going to leave the chart presentation and go and visit the Amsterdam City Archives on Read and Search. I'll give Tom an opportunity if you'd like to say something before I move forward. You're muted, Tom.
I don't have anything to add just now.
Okay.
And apart from that, this is excellent, and it's a very important project. And we are looking forward to part 2. So we'll take a look at the Amsterdam Archives to see how publication of the annual accounts will look like in the future. And after that, we'll take questions. If you can share your screen again.
I'm going to go back there. I hope I get it. Just bear with me while I try and get it right. It's I have to do 2 smart things.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Are we seeing a browser window for the Amsterdam Archives?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay, good. In which case I can search in the browser window. We chose a search which had names that we recognized from our work we were doing. So this is the browser window for the Amsterdam City Archives, and it's hosted by Transkribus, and it uses the data straight out of the software system that generates the transcriptions. So it's kept up to date as you improve and add and learn. I'm going to search here for the page is customized. Obviously, this is customized to the Amsterdam Archives. We'd have one customized to the Bevis Marks archive that we were doing. or whoever hosts, whoever sponsor of that archive. We search in the archive and it comes up with a list of pages where a list of documents where it occurs. So on the left-hand side, it's going showing that the two documents where Solomon, Medina, and Esther all show up. And then if you scroll down, you'll see that it's got snippets from those documents that show the text. I will select one of them. It's easy to find. And if I bring it up, select it, it'll then go and bring up the full text panel on the left. This is the text panel on the left with the original source and the transcription on the right. And you will see it's underlined the Medina, Solomon, and somewhere along the line, hopefully there's an Esther.
David, we don't see that.
Okay, in which case, let me stop sharing and do it another way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So where did you get lost before, once it changed the screen to a different one? Is that where it lost you?
On the screen before.
Okay.
We saw this list of results.
Okay, you saw the list of results?
But we didn't see when you clicked through.
Okay. Not sure how to do that.
Well, we are now seeing this page.
Yeah, and so this gets it, and this is a representative page. In the case of the accounts, we'd see the panel on the left with the original source in a similar view, but the accounts on the right would be tabular, corresponding with that, with the account, with the source. In this particular case, it's just solid text. Now it does have Solomon, it does have Esther in here too, but it didn't underline her name. So, and then again, over here, you can zoom in and you can move through your text. So it allows you to verify that what you're seeing as a transcription right is correct.
I would like to add that this Solomon de Medina is the same person as the first Gabbai who held an account book in London. Okay. So you may find him again in Amsterdam sources.
Well, this was an interesting one. I ran a Google Translate on it to see. So see, I know, Ton, you can read that. I can't. And I looked at it and I said, this is rather interesting. It's about a family business, estimate de Medina and this family and thing. It's very interesting. So I guess at this point, I hand it over to you, Ton, because I'm certainly happy to have some questions.
Yes. Okay. Diana Leon has a few questions. Where are the original Bevis mark ledgers located? And second one is, how was the original scanning of the pages accomplished? And is there a cost associated with using the Transkribus software?
Well, three good questions. But I think the original Bevis marks archives are in the London Metropolitan Museum, right?
London Metropolitan Archives.
Archives, right, London. And they can be viewed by this permission and travel of most people. So scanning, I'm not really sure how that was done or what it cost or who really took care of it. I understood there was a transaction with let me see, I did have a chart in here. It was, I understood that there was a foundation that paid for some of it, but it's not been clear to me how it was really done and who did it. We know there are about 200 books, archival items in National Library of Israel. And there's a third question, the cost. The cost. Transkribus.
Yeah, there's a cost.
Sorry, Transkribus cost, at least to get you started, if you sign on with an email address, you will get quite a few pages, maybe 500 pages to work with. If you, and for that doesn't cost you anything, but after that, you would have to pay.
Yeah, I believe like 20 cents per page. And with 140 account books of plus 200 pages each, that's going to cost a lot of money.
May I make a comment and ask a question as well? First of all, I'm a bit embarrassed to see my name included, because the work has been done overwhelmingly by David Silvera and assisted by Ali Ergensoy, and people like me who just occasionally turn up really don't deserve a mention. Also to just observe that this has been done essentially by a couple of individuals, and equivalent projects such as those of the National Libraries of Sweden or Finland, or the City Archives of Amsterdam, have a whole infrastructure behind them, and it would be wonderful if anyone has any can find any funding to help advance this project. But David, I recall you saying that for an equivalent German project, they more or less poured everything they had into a single, I'm not sure what the word is, database or model. How likely is it that we can reach a point where what we're doing here with the London records, for example, might be applied to the Inquisition records at the Torre do Tombo in Lisbon?
Well, I did do 1 or 2 pages myself to see what they looked like, and it was promising indeed, because the script was not. Okay, first of all, let me tell you, the Torre do Tombo scripts are much better. There's much more discipline in the priests, whoever wrote those records. They were much better scribes than the Portuguese who came to London and worked for the Gabbai. No question about that, hands down. There's obviously some relevance, but I think you could train. You might not want to start with ours, or you could do an experiment and start with the French handwriting again, or something else, because it wasn't really. We've got a lot of things in there which are peculiarities of the scribes we had, and I don't know if you want to carry that into the model for the Inquisition. I could go either way on that. I'd need to try and experiment and try it. But I did do a limited page, and it does work. It does. You know, if I certainly was getting about 70% accuracy on it.
Thank you. Ali, who is your principal collaborator, has a point.
Yeah, I was just going to say about the Inquisition records. We do know that Carla Vieira, who has given a couple of presentations on Sephardic world in the past at the Nova University in Lisbon, and her colleagues, a sort of group of people there, are currently working with Transkribus to create a model to transcribe the Inquisition archives. And they've got, I don't know how many people they've got, but a lot of people, and they've got funding from the European Union. And I believe the project started back in January and was looking to probably last about 18 months to build this model. And what they're doing is essentially sampling over the entire period of the Inquisition various texts written in various hands. So starting from, you know, the 16th century through to the late 18th probably early 19th century. So they will have an enormous body of transcription, sample transcriptions in this way, which then can be applied. And that goes to your earlier question, David, about the German model. In a very sort of Germanic style, they've managed to sort of, I don't know, tens and tens of thousands of, maybe hundreds of thousands of pages into a model, and just kept adding to it. And I think the logic in that is that the more variations you have of script, the more likely it is to the Transkribus will be able to recognize it, because it's an immensely powerful machine learning tool, as David was saying. And so in the end, if we can manage to transcribe, I don't know, 30 years or something worth of records, say at 10-year intervals or 5-year intervals or whatever, we'll have a really good chance of being able to transcribe anything in any of the Bevis Marx records, including the Mahamad's minutes, the elders' minutes, and things like that. It's really just a question of recognizing individual scribes' handwriting. And the way you do that is you just build up this kind of mass of data. So that, of course, is down to money, because Transkribus isn't free, as we've seen. And after a while, you run out of free credits, and it just needs that. And it also needs grunt which David has done 99% of. David Silvera has done 99% of, and has been an enormous inspiration and teacher to all of us. So, but we would love to be in a position to train up people to work on transcriptions and editing and things like that. Obviously with quality control. So, if there's anybody who wants to volunteer for that kind of work, please get in touch with David or Ton, and we can take it from there. And as David Mendoza said, also sources of funding. Yeah, that's really all I want to say.
Can I?
Okay.
Let me just say, it's a nice idea that you can program the computer and dump all this and let them look at everything. In the case of the books we're looking at, we wanted to get an accounting table, and it was really untidy. And Transkribus, I don't know how, I have a little bit of software background, and I'm looking at some of these lines going uphill. And in order to decipher which row information was on, I had to add up numbers on the right-hand side and count to figure out, because it's so untidy. So it's really hard, and you start to say, well, if you've got an accounting book that's that untidy, is it realistic to program a computer to read a line that goes uphill and gets smaller and smaller and smaller as it goes along? I don't know the answer. Those are the issues. In this particular case, it was a lot of hours, but I really was interested in the process, and got kind of quick at it too, of creating those layouts so that you'd get an accounting record. If you forego the accounting record and you just want to get a data file which has a mixture of text, and your columns and rows are not all that well organized, you can take that choice too, because you can still train, and you can still correct the transcription, and you can still search. But it's not as pretty when you look at the output. It's not as disciplined.
Thank you. David, with your permission, can I just give another question to Ali? Because we briefly, some time ago, were talking about the possibility of using the same approach with the Ottoman state archives. And these are obviously documents which are written in the Ottoman version of the Persian sort of Arabic script in Old Turkish, which obviously is of interest to us anyway, but there are also people watching who are interested in transcribing sort of Hebrew scripts and Cyrillic scripts. And I just I'm not sure whether Ali got anywhere with that, but I'd just be curious if that could be shared with a more general audience.
On the Ottoman script, I have to say we didn't get very far, or I didn't get very far. I did discover that there was a group of researchers, I think at the University of Vienna and possibly also in America, that were looking at, I think from memory, also using Transkribus and training a model. But the problem with Ottoman and any sort of Arabic script is this kind of squashing together of the words. And you probably know this better than I do, David, but missing out all the vowels, basically. So it's an enormously complex process to sort of turn that into intelligible words, and also the way that they're laid out. I think it's not simple. There are, however, I know on Transkribus, if you look, there are public models, and eventually our model will also be public once we've sort of happy with what we've got. There are public models, including Hebrew script, both script and typewritten. I mean, some of these, when we say typewritten words, or what do you call them? Typesets texts, we're talking in some cases about 17th century stuff. There were newspapers in Portuguese and German and whatever, and obviously it can recognize those as well because models have been trained for those, but also individual handwriting scripts. So, by all means, if you log on to Transkribus and create a username or whatever, and then have a look at their public models, there will be something there that will be useful.
Okay, there's a question from Dan Silvera. He is not sure how the quality of the originals or scans plays into the performance of the transcription software. Have you noticed the difference in performance? I think I can answer that one. The National Library of Israel allows you to download these annual accounts in two versions, high quality and medium quality. And we tried both, but there was no difference in performance. I don't know about low quality. Our main problem is not the quality of the scans,
Yes, right.
but the quality of the handwriting of the scribe in question.
Yeah,
And additionally, many of the scribes had lots of hieroglyphics that they put around it. They put dashed lines to show continuity across the page, and asterisks, and these things just really means you have when the computer sees this and tries to thinks it's a word, then it's going to try and give you a word for it. So you have to make sure the computer does not look at those things. So there's a lot of hand cleanup that you do before you send it for transcription in pages like that. It's really up more effective the scribe than the quality of the scan.
Kevin Martin shares a link to a website where volunteers from the Philadelphia Jewish congregations are transcribing archives of that congregation, and the link is in the chat.
Oh, great.
And Bruce Kahan says, great application of artificial intelligence and machine learning. How might the Sephardic Genealogical Society build a clearinghouse of confirmed named individuals, their places of birth, death, marriage, etc.? I think the first part of the question, confirmed named individuals, follow from the project itself. It's a process where you get more and more surety about names, and in the end, you have the possibility to proclaim something. What's the term, Adi? Final, etc. So that follows from the project. But to connect individuals, places of birth, death, marriage, that requires another kind of software, I think. And maybe David Mendoza can tell something about that.
Yes, I mean this is sort of software I used in a previous life in sort of modeling markets, and essentially what you do is you just have a whole set of logical rules which hopefully will narrow down what you're looking, but always at the end you're going to have a human operator reviewing what the computer has output. But it's certainly very, very possible, because of course remembering that we have a limited population of individuals we're looking at. But Bernard has his hand up if he wants to.
Yeah, first of all, David and Ali and Ton and anybody else who helped you, including the other David, thank you so much. This is absolutely mind-blowing and really important work. And I would like to offer, if I'm able to help in any way, I'm currently spending 1 or 2 days a month at the London Metropolitan Archives, personally scanning and digitizing 64 boxes of my mother's documents. So, you know, to spend more time there might be something that I would be happy with. I've got a couple of questions. One is, this is really very basic, but right at the beginning, you talked about redeeming the captives, and I didn't know about funding, presumably, for redeeming the captives, and I didn't even know what that referred to in my ignorance, so perhaps you could say something on that. The second thing is technical. If we are using or viewing the transcribed documents and see what are clearly errors, and just in the page that you showed from the Amsterdam Archives, I noticed that there was a Juffrouw Esther de Medina who appeared as Eoter de Medina, and an Isaac de Medina who appeared as Isaiah de Medina, and I assume both of those are errors. What do you do to correct them? Is there some basic, simple submission system? Do you do it through somebody? And I wouldn't want to be duplicating it if somebody else is doing the same. So might there be some way of knowing whether other people are looking at the same documents and might be submitting the same corrections? And the third question, and this is a personal family one, you referred to the mysterious Lopez Pereira family. And since some of them were my 10th and 11th great-grandparents, and they were also part of the Abendanas, I wondered what the mystery is.
I'm going to let that third one go to Tom, because I'm not sure I'm qualified to answer that.
Okay.
But I go back to the captives. There was a Parnas de Cautivas in the Spanish Portuguese community from early days, because pirates and others were taking hostages, and so you had to collect money to redeem hostages. It was
okay. So it's hostage payment.
Yes, it's hostage payment, and it was a position in the community that recognized position in the community to negotiate that.
Thank you.
The second question was a valid one. How do you turn in improvements and corrections and so on? I'm not sure how that will be done right now. Obviously, there are groups that work with collaboratively on the data, and there are ways for them to do that, because they get editing privileges to do that. So where it's just a publication, it would not go with editing privileges. But if somebody was real qualified and wanted to get involved in editing, that we could certainly bring them in as an editor to do that. So my initial concept was, if you find something, send us an email, we'll fix it. But it obviously could be a lot of work as things when things grow. But initially, that was what it had to do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Uh,
Lopez Pereira.
Yeah. Lopez Pereira. I haven't done any research into that family. I have.
Oh, so they're just a mystery.
I have the feeling that there is more than one Lopez Pereira family. The name Lopez is very common. Pereira is very common, and the combination is not rare. So there must be different families with the same name. But someone who has done a lot of research into that is Michael Waas, and maybe can you help you out?
Thanks.
The question about the inaccuracies on the Amsterdam website is that they take that for granted. They strive for 95% surety. That means that they take 5% false for granted. You can work around that by using fuzzy search, and it will find the variants of Esther that you can't find with exact search.
Yeah, no, it's just I would like to contribute to correcting them if it's possible.
As you could see from the example that David shared, there's a lot.
Yeah,
needs to be corrected.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Ali, do you have something to say?
Yeah. I just wanted to add to that. I mean, Ton's actually, said what I was going to say mostly, but there's a difference between what the Amsterdam Archives output is and ours, and that is that Amsterdam, as we've said, use lots of students, hundreds of people, to transcribe thousands and thousands and thousands of pages, and it's as good as the quality of the transcription. David and Ton have been extremely diligent in going over our source material and making sure the transcription is as faithful as possible. So when you do a search, you'll get variations, but the variations will be what's there in the search anyway. So if there's different spellings of Esther, you'll need to run a fuzzy search. But what is there is what you get. Whereas I think in some cases in the Amsterdam records, they're just mistranscriptions, and that's why you're getting those errors. So also, we don't really want to correct the errors at this stage because they're not errors; they're just the way that the scribes have written them.
Yeah.
That would come at a later stage once you're initially translating it, maybe, or editing it for in correct Portuguese or whatever. But I think at this stage, there doesn't need to be a mechanism for correcting things because it's not wrong.
Well, I'll tell you, I think there are at least 6 different spellings for circumcision. So I devise even the fuzzy search.
Yes. The other question from Bernard concerned this fund for the freeing of captives. There were 2 obligations that Jews everywhere took upon them with regard to helping internationally. One was the help for Terra Santa, and the other was the obligation to free Jewish captives everywhere. And therefore they had the Parnas de Katvas, who sampled money. Requests came in from everywhere, Mediterranean, the Ottoman Empire, Eastern Europe, to free people held captive for ransom. And this was paid for by the fund of the Kuitenwas. And there is still a Parnas de Kuitenwas in London.
Thank you.
Bruce.
Bruce Kahan has his hand up.
Yeah, hi. This is amazing work. I teach at Stanford, and so the CS behind all of this is the computer science behind this is really great. To your point, David, it's painful to have only one definition for circumcision, but having six, I'm glad I didn't have any ambiguity in the case of my twin sons or myself. But on a serious note, it does feel, as I listen to weeks and weeks and weeks of this, and Ali, you'll understand why I'm saying this, that the reconfirmations of the same people would seem to want to build something like a Wikipedia or a Sephardia, that as the reconfirmation of multiple spellings of the same person's name, or the instances of them appearing in multiple places confirm. There's only so many, as Tan certainly has beat into us, there are only so many Sephardim. And yes, they traveled through their journeys to different places, and so therefore they recorded, and their activities recorded at different times. I just wonder, when you think about the meta project that you would want, how might the organic nature of discovery build a more trustworthy, with a trust score indicia as metadata of the person's name or the person's travel or the person's ultimately heritage? How could that self-assemble as the layer from which this brilliant transcription work, lets us do the text analysis and start to encode a hyperlinking of what you find in the handwritten records, if I made myself clear.
Well, David, maybe Ali.
Okay, I'll bite. That's a very good point, actually, Bruce. And it's part of something I think that Tom and David have hinted at in the past, that there's this kind of super project to kind of build the entire Sephardic family tree. I think there could be various approaches to this. David Mendoza has spoken about his work. I know there's some also, various kind of academic studies. It sort of comes under the heading of nominal record linkage, if that's something that interests people. You can look that up. And also what is called family reconstitution, and sometimes total reconstitution, where you build these linkages from different sources and build a relational database where you can query things, for all sorts of purposes. A lot of this has been used in connection with demographic analysis, so nuptiality patterns, mortality patterns, that sort of thing. But there's nothing to stop a kind of database being built that would also be able to capture things like immigration and immigration events. And, as long as you have a certain amount of certainty that that person is the same person, that turns up in another document, and there would be rules for that, which David Mendoza mentioned, then that can be built. And I think that's kind of one of these days, that's what we're going to aim for. But we're still at the early stages, I think, of collecting material.
I don't think of my silence as lack of interest, because I'm a database guy. And I look at this and I start with the index that's got given name before other names and the various spellings and now. So essentially with the index of each year, you get pretty good index of the male members of the community. There's a dearth of information on the women members of the community, and it's not in the later years that they even captured the births of girls and so on. So that isn't there. And then you get arrivals and departures, and I just called one out to Villegas arrived. Well, I would probably know by next time I look in there that Villegas joined and what's his other names, you know. But I don't see where he came from necessarily, and so I can't create any sort of file structures in my mind and tables in my mind how things could be structured or complete. Not yet, anyway.
I don't know. It reminds me a lot of the place naming that geospatial community had to deal with, where the same place was called multiple things by different groups, and but it can only have one latitude, longitude.
So you're looking for the absolute somewhere. So yeah, okay.
And then there are synonyms, right?
Right. Not there yet. Tom?
David Mendoza, are there any questions on YouTube? And if not, I think we can wind up for today.
There's a couple of comments only, but just to follow on what Bruce was saying, because Bruce is especially interested in migration, and what we have previously had is in the Ketubot, it says if somebody is a Vindo, if they've just arrived from Portugal. But what we're also finding in the, when I say we, I mean David and Ali, are finding in the accounts is prayers and things being offered for people who've just arrived from sort of Portugal or Spain. So there is sort of much more information that can be extracted there to give a more precise view. I mean, obviously Ali knows much more on this than I do.
I did start the process of seeing what I could extract for arrivals and departures. Right now it's very non-specific. I've got names, maybe a surname, and when they were welcomed and when they were bid farewell and bon voyage, you know. Okay.
So if there are no more questions on YouTube, I think we can wrap it up, David.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so as always, thank you to our patrons who make all of this possible. Thank you to our viewers on YouTube, and a special thank you to David Silvera, who shared his knowledge and technology with us. And we will be back in a few weeks' time. Thank you all, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.